Pregame.com.
Rams at Seattle, Monday Night Football. You know, Marco, we got an opportunity here to do something a little different. We're taping on Wednesday. No line on this game. The injuries at quarterback for the Rams are so uncertain. But I thought this was a great opportunity to talk injuries. And whatever ends up happening leading up to the game on Monday, you can take these concepts and apply them to Monday and moving forward. You know, the old saying, buy a guy a fish sandwich, he eats one day. Teach him to fish, he eats for a lifetime.
Or you just get a big bankroll and just keep buying your own fish sandwiches.
All right, so one of your pet theories is the injured player theory. Mm-hmm. Give us 30 seconds on that.
The injured player theory is simple. When you lose a star player, Vegas is going to over-adjust the line because they know which way the public money's coming. So automatically, you're generally going to have value.
But let's be clear. I think the way you're saying it isn't exactly the right wording, not about the injured player, but who adjusts what. The bookmakers create a line. And then, well, first off, there's 2 or 3 bookmakers in the world that create a line. Chris, Greek, occasionally Win with the college football low limits. Mm-hmm. Hilton with some puts out their look-ahead line in the NFL. Otherwise, every other quote-unquote bookmaker in the world is a clone in a line off of the screen.
Absolutely.
Right. So there's that initial open, but after that, it's the betting market that decides where the line goes, and it's the bettor. So what you're saying is the bettors typically overreact.
The bettors overreact. They know which way they jump on the game because they overreact to injuries. They're always going to figure that an injured team is at a huge disadvantage. So they run to the window to bet against them. So that's going to give you value with the injured team just to start before anything else. Secondly, because you are the injured team. Now, I'll give it some caveats to where it becomes better. If you have an injured team that has a good defense, that's a good plus for you because now generally you're going to be getting more points if you're the underdog in the game and you've got a defense. Your team, especially your strong suit, your defense, is going to rise up. Every player on that team knows we're without our star. We got to bring our A game and maybe a little bit more to get that extra effort to try to get us over the hump of this disadvantage of losing our star player. That creates, you've got maximum effort on one side.
So the public's overreacting and the players themselves are playing better than they typically would because of extra focus and motivation.
Then the team that's playing the injured team, it's a natural human mental letdown. If the star quarterback's out for your opponent, you got to feel, wow, we just caught a break. And they might not play at 100%. They might only play at 90%. But it's just those little not giving your best and the other team's giving more than their best, that can overcompensate. And then with the added line, it's value, and that's what we look for.
And I think in general, 9 times out of 10, when there's a marquee injury, that happens. And I think the Houston game last week was a perfect example. Is the look-ahead line in that game was Houston minus 2.5. Mm-hmm. That was with Leinart at quarterback. Mm-hmm. Then they go from a second to third string quarterback, which my guys at VegasRankings.com said 1.5 points. They adjusted at 5.5 points, all the way to 3. Well, the pros bet that down, down to 1 at game time. That was, hey, it worked out. That was one example.
It was actually 2 examples because they were in the injured player theory the week before. You had Leinart starting for Schaub the week before, and then last week you had TJ8. So they had back-to-back weeks with it.
Now what ends up happening, and you see this the next week, if the team does win like Houston, people all of a sudden say, oh, well, heck, this Yates is just as good, and then they overreact back. And you're seeing that right now. Our Vegas rankings actually are being published at ESPN.com. You can check that out in the insider section or at pregame.com. Just go directly on the homepage. You can click the link to Vegas rankings, or you can go to vegasrankings.com. Over at ESPN, where there's a conversation going on about the article, they're saying, I can't believe Cincinnati's laying 3, and oh my God, Houston should be, pick them at worst. I love the dog. And, my response is, hey, this is the team that was getting 3 points, on Saturday or whenever, I guess it was late Friday that the line shifted. And now all of a sudden, Cincinnati saying these are even teams with the Yates is absurd. I'm not sure what the right side is, but it's not absurd. So usually that next week you either want to pass on the team or actually start to fade them if there's too much of a secondary reaction.
Yeah, well, the other reason is, too, for the first week where we say, the injured team, all the other players play at a higher level, if they get the win without them, then they come back down.
And the opponent, so it's 3 fronts, and there's a reaction again. Public overreacts again.
Mm-hmm.
The players on the injured team relax a little bit, and then the opponent takes it more seriously.
Yeah, don't take it for granted.
It's a great, I guess, 2 sides of the same coin, and it's something, a lot of years of experience came up with that theory. I just use it all the time on the radio.
Yeah. Do you ever throw me a bone and give me my old timer, that big fat guy, that's been around forever?
Okay, if it's a smaller station, I do.
The sad part, guys, is he's telling the truth. That's the sad part.
The big stations don't want to hear. They don't care where it's coming from. But here's the thing. I think 9 times out of 10 you're right. I think, or maybe 19 out of 20. But one time, occasionally, it's wrong. And here's where I think it might be in this game. Is if the change is so extreme that it just naturally can't be properly accounted for. Let's look at the Colts this year. Mm-hmm. The Colts, there was a lot of talk. I'm not gonna give anyone negative heat, but there was a well-known former odds maker who's now, I guess, selling picks. I don't know what exactly he's doing, but he was saying that he thought the Peyton Manning was worth 4 points. And this was the first week when he was out. Yeah, everyone's overreacting. Now, personally, I thought the year before, Rodgers was out one game, and most bookmakers made a 6 to 7 point adjustment. I thought Manning was worth at least that much. Mm-hmm. Now, in hindsight, we're seeing he was worth 10, 11 points. When you look at the lines from the look-aheads in July to now, it's moving towards 10, 11 points of adjustment, if not even more in some spots. Now, why is that? Is it because Peyton Manning is so great? Somewhat. But I think it was because of the offense was such that he was calling the plays on the field, that putting anyone else in there was going to fundamentally change the team.
A lot of people refer to Manning is not only did they lose their quarterback, they lost an assistant coach because he basically was an offensive coordinator out on the field. I mean, he did more than any other quarterback does in the NFL.
But especially the first 2-3 games, there really wasn't the proper adjustment. We finally, now, this is maybe the worst team in NFL history. There's only been one other 0-16, right? And at this point, it's moving towards that's not looking super unlikely at this point. Now, what's that other situation where as much as people want to react, they can't react enough? Super extreme weather is like literally when there's like a foot of snow. Mm-hmm. Right? Is they'll move that total to 30, 29, mm-hmm. and then the game ends up 9-3. I mean, you've seen. I mean, this happens maybe once a year, but you've had 30 some of them where it just the weather gets so bad. Were they going to put the total at 11.5? They can't adjust enough. Now you've seen that with the weather, right?
Exactly, and it's one of those things with weather is. You got to know that it's going to be there for the whole, sometimes a severe storm comes. Now, if it's a snowstorm and with advanced weather these days, that that's going to be there for 4 hours right through the bulk of the game, and you don't have to worry. But what hurts is if you have bad weather at the beginning of the game and it stops at halftime, and and then the conditions change.
But the point is, just like there's an overreaction with quarterbacks, oftentimes or big name players. Typically, you want to bet under high totals mm-hmm. and over low totals because people are naturally over. Oh, look, the Patriots scored a lot of points. The Saints scored a lot of points. You usually want to go under totals mm-hmm. above 50 and over totals below 33, let's say. Mm-hmm. Now, in some cases, though, it's not the case. And you see that sometimes in overs in college football. You have 2 great offenses, and they put the total up in the 70s or, low 70s, and they end up scoring 100 points because it's just you can't make a total of 95. I guess you could, but naturally
there's always a floor and there's always a ceiling that they got to do.
Now, I look at this game, and I'm saying this third-string quarterback for the Rams has never taken an NFL snap. he's only been, if I'm not, and I did some reading before the video, I think he's only even been on the Rams practice squad for like a month. I think they just is that right? Or are you certain of that?
I'm not certain of that, but I believe you're correct.
So this is, and the coach was saying, well, at least he's been here a month. He's not completely ignorant of the offense. And it's like, I think that this is a situation where I'm not sure if they're going to be able to adjust the line enough. And and I think it's a good teaching moment here. And again, if Bradford comes back, I actually really like Seattle, because another flip side of things is when guys come back, they usually readjust the line all the way, as if he's 100% healthy. But in truth, he's probably only, if he's uncertain coming into the weekend, he's not going to be at 100%. Now, you occasionally have the Kirk Gibson moment and all that stuff, but you have a guy that's not quite as fast or not quite feeling right, then he's not worth as many points. So you'll have a situation where a quarterback's worth, let's say, 3 points. All right, Vic, they said initially was worth about 3 points, they thought. Now, if he comes back at 80%, you don't add back all 3 points, but usually the market does. So if Bradford comes back, he's not going to be 100%. I'm going to really like Seattle here in that case. But I'm also not sure, even if he doesn't come back and they put this line up, what, 7.5? I mean, what would you guess? The look-ahead line was what, 4.5 Seattle?
4.5, yeah.
And I'd assume Bradford was going to play, I think.
Right.
So it goes to what, 3 or 4 extra points, right? It can't be over 8, can it?
They'll bring this line. I think you're right with it, 7.5. You know, again, you're talking about a Seattle team that's not a great margin club, but if you want to look at just the nuts and bolts of this particular game, if all things were equal, and everybody was healthy, you still have a huge advantage for Seattle in this game. They played on Thursday night the week before, so you've got the biggest gap that you could have without a full bye. They're going from Thursday to Monday. Seattle has always been a better home team than road team. Now, on the flip side,
they've won 12 or 13 against the Rams, so they've done well against the Rams.
And I was just going to point that this is a second meeting. They've already beat the Rams in St. Louis this year. I generally don't like to take a home team that's already won the first meeting on the road, because you're going to have
another negative with Seattle is their left tackle's out, and that's the kind of injury people usually undervalue, and it's worth more than people think. One other stat, and then we can wrap up the whole injury thing, is since week 9, Lynch has led the NFL in rushing. So this is a team that's running the ball well, but I think the takeaway here, guys, is most of the time, if it's a public injury, the market overreacts to it. If it's not a public injury, like a left tackle, like a center, and the Jets with Mangold this year without him was a big adjustment, but wasn't really being adjusted, right? Typically, you want to play against the team with the less marquee injuries, okay? Because those are just as meaningful sometimes, but not being adjusted for. But the real takeaway here is a couple times in NFL season, there's a circumstance so extreme that you can't overreact. And sometimes it's just giving money away. And that's probably not the right phrase, but sometimes it really is like a 70% play because you can't overreact, because this guy's going to be fumbling, he's going to be stumbling. I mean, it's not the adjustment between a decent quarterback and a good quarterback. It's a guy that maybe shouldn't even be in the league.
You're exactly right. This presents a lot of problems for Vegas, because they wouldn't be so concerned with this game if it was on Sunday amidst the rest of the schedule, because this game wouldn't get that much play, even with the injuries. But the fact that it's Monday night, people bet Monday night no matter what. You got people that are down for the week, and then they're going to press. And Vegas knows when they finally put this number up, they're going to get hit with what they put up. So they got to be careful with what they do, and they're going to wait as late as possible for a couple reasons. One, they don't want to have a last-minute surprise and have Bradford, end up being upgraded and being in there. Plus, they're not going to want to have a bunch of open teasers early in the week, have themselves, everybody if they put a number up at 7.5, what's people going to do with the teaser? You know how many teasers are going to be open on, Monday night with Seattle down, live teasers going into Monday. So, I mean, they got to be careful with this game.
No, I agree 100%. And to me, to wrap up, is let's look at the Houston-Yates situation. And on the Friday podcast that I do with Chris Andrews from Countiva Sportsbook and Brian Leonard from pregame.com, is we break down early Friday morning all of Colin's 5 picks. By the way, you can get that, and Marco does a Friday podcast It's a round table. Get all of the podcasts at pregamepods.com. Chris Andrews said, I've heard that Yates has practiced before the injury, so all through training camp, all during the weeks, practiced just as well as Leinart, and that if it wasn't for the financial investment they had made in Leinart, that Yates might have got the start. Now, when you're adjusting 5.5 points when the quarterbacks are almost equal, if they adjust even 5.5 points here from 4.5 to 9.5, or hopefully not 10 if you want to lay the favor, they're making the same adjustment robotically, but it seems like a very different situation. And who knows? This guy could come out and have one of those first-timer amazing lucks. You know why I don't think he will? Because he hasn't been with the team the whole year. It's one thing if it's a third-string quarterback, it's been all through training camp. This guy's wondering about the play still, you got to figure. That seems huge to me.
One other thing that we didn't touch upon real quick with the injured player theory, you got to look at the team too, and I talked about defensive teams. We're late in the season. This is a team that's out of the playoffs. The injured player theory works better when it's early in the season and the teams are still alive for the playoffs.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be early. It's still that there's still max motivation.
Right. You either have to be early in the season, or if it's late in the season, you want a team that's still in the hunt. Those are the things.
Or playing for something.
Right. St. Louis isn't playing for anything.
And to me, it's just one of those things that separates the I don't want to say wannabe wise guy, but let's call it the half a wise guy. Is he understands he might be saying, oh, there's an injured player. I'm gonna, I've been hearing Marco talk about it, but there's that 10% or 5% of the time that's the exception that proves the rule. I think it might be this. So I'm gonna say I actually like Seattle either way. I don't want to lay more than 10, but if Bradford doesn't play, I'll lay up to 9.5. If Bradford does play, with Seattle, I guess I'd be okay laying up to 4 in that case. So let's call it a pick if either of those two scenarios. And otherwise, I think it was a good teaching moment. Remember, guys, special thing on Monday night, no matter who quarterbacks, you can pick the score. Just go to pregamevideos.com where we put all of the videos all week in one super thread. Guess the score of the game. You can wait all the way up till game time and see who's quarterbacking. If you get the score exactly right, you win $100 pregame dollars to spend any way you want. No risk, no obligation, just a free roll. Check it out, pregamevideos.com. Talk to you there.